Not gonna be here?
Don't set them things near me.
Well, I know you said no last time. Here. Cheers. Aren't they cute? You can take all of it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not.
It is.
No, it's not. That's weird.
Well, how am I seeing you and him? And
Al's not on.
and how am I seeing everybody if the owl is not on?
Because each of us are on individually.
Here it is. She just yelled at me.
Oh, that's not right.
Well, it's just, yeah, it doesn't have any, oh, now it's got like.
The ties are on.
There, now it is. Now you're good.
Yeah, I see. I got it.
This was supposed to be that. Yeah. We have just the one warrant, just the hearing scheduled, right? Tuesday. We need Larry, right?
It would be nice. He's still, he's in Texas. I mean, there's not a whole lot of change in it, so I don't know if there'll be a whole lot of discussion.
Oh, no, I just wanted to give him the opportunity.
Right. But I've given him the opportunity. I mean, I get it. He wanted to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time I'm going to actually. I don't know if I can get my. I don't just need it on here. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe I won't be on. Really? No, no.
We'll give it one more minute and then. We'll go. Mostly because I want to finish it.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I don't want people to see me eating. Method to my madness.
I'm gonna remember that. You look good from your nose up.
Should have heard that more.
There's nothing there. Just, I mean, you can have it if you want, but.
All right. Calling the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Please rise if you are able and join me in the pledge of allegiance. Yep.
So I handed out already 3 adjustments to the budget. One was to wastewater, which we haven't even discussed yet, so we'll get to that tonight. The other was for the county tax. I had estimated 750,000 for county tax. I did actually get the actual figure, which is 749,103. So, and then the third one was a change to contractual services. Under the audit, I had budgeted 26,000, and the audit cost actually coming in at 26,300. So minor changes there.
We have police, SRO, and waterfront left to do, and then we'll get into capital. Larry was planning to be with us on Zoom, but I don't see him, but we'll move ahead and we can come back to it if people have questions that can't be answered at the moment. Yeah. Capital.
Is your have to do the votes all in one meeting?
Yeah, next week.
Should we plan to do the budget votes in the same track like last year or schedule another meeting? Or
If you want to. I mean, that's fine.
That's probably the easiest thing to do.
Mhm.
Just go through that.
Yep. Sure. All right, so let's start out with police then.
Not a big change in the police department budget this year. Wages are already set by contract, so the wage increases are basically by contract. Everything else is, except for some minor changes, is pretty much where it was.
Questions on the police department budget? Once. Going twice. Okay. SRO,
So the SRO budget shows a decrease. Last year, we put the entire year in the SRO budget. But after talking with the auditor, they didn't like that, so
the SRO is in the police department.
it's in the police
tab.
department, yeah. The auditor didn't feel that that was the proper place to put it, so we changed it back. And remember that the school does have a $60,000 grant to pay for this, so only 6,000 of this will come from taxation.
Any questions? Okay. Moving on to waterfront. Well, also water.
We didn't do waterfront?
No. You don't have to for Larry, but.
Yeah, that's right. So some of the big increases here are utilities as everything has gone up.
Especially on the utilities, sort of, the water and the sewer.
Mhm.
You're tracking the same on both, with the homeowners for years, I understand that. But should there not be perhaps the line broken out down there in 2 meters?
Well, it hasn't been 2 meters yet, but we can.
The majority of the water usage here, I would think, goes over to the commercial side,
Correct,
and that would be exempt from sewer.
correct. I would just have to sit down and figure out how much that actually is going to be. I mean, we're not talking like $10,000 here. We're talking a few thousand. Oh, I get it. But we're also going to have to pay for the cost of the meter too, so.
Let's figure out what that unit. I just think, I think it's a waste of money. I know the sewer department needs the money, but
No, I fully agree that we need another meter down there. No question.
so they can get another version of it. So just to be clear, so when we get to the fees later, we've got a big portion of that that relates to the waterfront. Are those fees baked into the numbers that are in here for the revenue, or are those incremental to it? Which part are you shaking your?
No, they're not baked into it because they're not approved yet, so.
Revenue showing on the document 21.5.
Mhm. Mhm.
The increases would be incremental to that.
Yes,
Do we have, once they're approved, will there be like a projection or a change to this and see so we net out?
no, because the timing won't come out right. So any of the waterfront fees have to go before they can be approved by the board, have to go to a public hearing. And we won't have time to get that in before this budget. So it'll just be extra revenue that comes up next year.
See what they are per unit, but we have an estimate of like how much they'll rate per year.
I haven't, but I can. I mean, we're not talking huge amounts of money here.
A public hearing, is that, I know that's for like mooring fees and things like that, does that also extend to the vendor fees?
I would have to double check the ordinance, but I think it says any fees have to go out to a public hearing.
Any and all fees,
No,
okay.
harbor fees.
Harbor fees.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay. Wastewater. If you would like to, yeah, sure.
So again, utility costs are up. um, To run the plant down there, as well as labor costs for union contract. Supply costs are going up, and as Rob will tell you, that we keep getting hit constantly with increases in chemical fees that just keep coming month after month. And one major issue that we're having right now, along with about 30 other sewer treatment plants across the state, is the disposal of sludge. It used to go to Juniper Ridge, which was a place that would treat it and turn it into fertilizer. And last year, the state passed a law that said we can't do that anymore because of the PFAS that's being found in the sludge. Therefore, it needs to be landfilled. However, also last year, the state passed another law that would not allow Casella, who operates the landfill, to import bulky waste from out of state. And in order to landfill this sludge, they need that bulky waste to mix with it, kind of destabilize it, because if they just pour all of the sludge into the landfill, it pancakes, it puts pressure on the landfill, and it destabilizes the whole landfill. So this is kind of a crisis. I'd love everybody to be aware of, keep an eye on, talk to your legislatures. Right now, we're getting around this by transferring the sludge to Canada, where they're still using it as fertilizer. But I have a feeling that once they realize that it's polluted with PFAS, they're not going to want it either. And if that stops, we've got a problem, because we don't have any place to store it. And neither does most any other places. And the dire consequence for this is it's going to end up going untreated right into the river. So I'm telling you this because this is the change between the two budgets that you had, the original budget that you had in your book and the one that I gave you tonight, because we had to up the fee for sludge disposal, which was an additional $20,000. So that's the story there. Remember this, the wastewater is an enterprise account. It does not come from taxation, or it's not supposed to anyways. So this will not affect your tax rate.
Questions?
Well, have anything you want to add?
I only want to say that last year, the voters allowed for a rate increase. And that rate increase, we're a few percentage points behind, but in past years, when our revenues would be 10 to 15% behind the expected budget, we are, I think, 3% off right now from the increased budget that was passed last year. And that's a wonderful thing. I think already we may have brought in more revenue from sewer billings than we had that I've seen in the past. So well, that's what's still 4 months to go. So right now, so you're aware, we do have Kathy Robinson from Maine Rural Water looking at this budget, this upcoming fiscal year budget, and she will recommend a rate increase that covers the cost of living and will also hopefully help us to match with bills what this expected budget is. So I just want to put that out there. So we're hopeful.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Rob.
Okay.
Can we go ahead and do capital or fees?
Whatever you want to do.
Let's go ahead and dive into capital.
So I included in the beginning of your entire budget book, the town's investment policy, just as a reminder as to how much money and how we take care of this capital reserve fund. And as I pointed out in past years, the recommended maximum amount to take out of the fund in order to preserve it is 4.5%. I don't know if there's ever been a year that they've taken out 4.5% or less. A lot of capital requests this year. I've included the large spreadsheets that you guys have, projecting out several years, already showing you that beyond this year, we're still not going to be at 4.5%. So we have a lot of stuff. You offer a lot of stuff. You have a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to be paid for. So that's my start with that. Where am I? So the first capital request in here is actually from myself. We have a lot of computers that are very outdated. Some of them can't be updated. We have old printers that aren't usable, so I'm asking for 20,000. Kind of do a townwide upgrade on our computer system and printers and other peripheral items. 3, 4, 5, 6 computers and several different printers, as well as a big printer for the office. I'm hoping the total will come in under this, but it's a combination of both. Most of them will be desktops, the all-in-ones, the screen with, yes, yeah, all PCs, yeah. It's a guy called Modem Waves. We contract our IT outside. He's cheap. Yeah, he likes to sell me refurbished stuff sometimes that I don't care for. The second request out of the administration is 300,000 for an evaluation. The town has not had a reevaluation since 2007. We are very, very far behind on reevaluation. Our property values are not equal as required by state statute. And this is something that just has to get done. We are not certified at 100% ratio with the state any longer because it's been so long since we've done a reevaluation. And if we can't certify at 100%, that starts to impact people's taxes because it affects their homestead exemption. So this will not get done this year. I just don't see any way that we could go out for an RFP after the June town meeting and get a reevaluation done. I'm thinking it's probably going to be 2 years before we can manage it. There are a lot of towns in the same situation as we are. So, and I know we're talking from some of my colleagues across the state, it's taken 2 or 3 years. So this would basically just be an earmark. Get the money, set it aside, and as soon as we can get it done, we can get it done. Yes. It's all the way at the end.
Earmark that one.
Yeah. It's on the last page, all the way down to towards the bottom. If you look at FY24, you'll see 300,000 reevaluation. And then we're off 15% this year. So you remember when Ellery was here a couple of months ago, we talked about this. And you know, this year we're just going to have to up everybody's value rate across the board by 15% in order to get caught up to the state. Now, that doesn't mean your taxes are going to go up 15%. So.
They're not able to get that.
They're going to be short. And it doesn't, as I said, it doesn't change anybody's taxes because it's an across the board evaluation. It will change the mill rate.
What I'm
Yeah.
saying is people have more money coming back to
Yes.
them on their
Oh, no.
taxes by doing the revaluation.
Yes, because of the homestead.
Any questions on either of the administration and capital items? Okay, Yep.
You can sign all day, but somebody doesn't do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Dwayne came in, yes. Yep. So next to the community center, requests. Dwayne has put in a request to replace the roadside sign, that's currently a hand sign with something similar to what we have out front, here at the town office. And we had an estimated cost of $40,000 for that. He's put in a request for $88,000 to pave the parking lot, and given the fact that we are looking at so many requests this year, I'm not recommending that. It will need to get done. And the longer we put it off, the more expensive it's going to be, but. And then lastly, he's looking for $5,000 to replace one of the old refrigerators up there, which I do support. I would normally say that we could probably take this out of his budget at the end of the year, but I don't think it's going to be there, so.
any questions on these three? Yeah,
Did you say that the sign, the lighted sign is estimated at 40,000? My recollection, that one was put in shortly after we moved to it, and it was 14 or 15,000 dollars.
It's a double-sided, multicolored, multi-item,
This one's double.
and it's also removed. It has the ability to put pictures on it as well.
It's things insane.
So it's all good, this is fine. So, yeah.
15,000 to 40,000. That just seems really. Not to mention, pardon me, but when that sign was first installed, there used to be meetings and all sorts of information on there. Basically now it tells you, welcome to the statute, which it says unlighted above.
no, it has.
Oh, we're putting meetings on it. We're putting meetings on it.
Any other questions on the sign or the two other pieces? All right. EMS,
Follow up on that, end it a little bit.
sure, if you want to.
And needs, we need a digital sign. I will say that going out and putting letters on that board, you can only advertise one thing or three lines of a certain line. It'd be nice to have a sign that is double-sided, that roll through different activities, programs, and things that you have going on, because it's out on the road. It would have to be a Bluetooth sign because there's no hard wire from the building to it. It does have to have certain items in it that make it more accessible to you and it's I think it's something that's been needed for a good number of years. It's something that I think would enhance the business strategy.
Is there an alternative approach where you have use the internet or like people over the website to say?
We do.
Facebook.
We use Facebook, we use the internet. I mean, we do try to push out programs and activities through Facebook.
You want the sign.
I would like to find out there.
EMS,
Aaron's put in a request for another automated CPR machine. We have one currently, but we do have two ambulances. And sometimes if that one ambulance is gone, the machine's on it and we need it elsewhere, we don't have it. I'm pretty sure that we're probably going to be able to take this out of her budget this year. If not, we could certainly use the ARPA funds, leftover ARPA funds for it. So I don't really think we need to consider this for capital tonight. And that same thing with the fire department and which is next with their Scott packs. I think we can either come up with that out of the budget or we could probably take that out of the ARPA funds as well. But we put them in here. If you guys decide that's where you want to take them, that's fine with me.
Any question on the EMS one? Okay.
I'd like to know more about this. This compression change. Talk about it in capital. Wait on that.
We can talk about it now.
I'm just like, how much does it help us out? I was counting the information that's included and kind of talked about general information about how emergencies go, but I couldn't find specifically where this machine improves those numbers.
Aaron, do you want to speak to that?
Hold on. Did you read the little blurb that I wrote in the beginning? Okay.
So,
Yeah, that may have been in there.
so we have a hard time getting people to come. And the only way that you can do is to have at least 5 people, because you need to rotate through, because if anybody's done CPR, after 2 minutes, you're smoked and you're not doing it properly. So the device, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't pause, it doesn't do anything unless I ask it to, you know, until it's do compressions, it doesn't. And we have gotten 5 ROS, which is return of circulation. So the person's heart has started beating again. So I can take them to the hospital and possibly get them out. So that's why it's when we first came out, we were kind of like, oh, how great can it be? But when you have this device, you set it, it goes, it does perfect compressions, perfect depth, perfect everything for you for the next 35 minutes.
Got another one. So you already got one.
We have,
You're familiar with these.
yeah,
Okay.
we've gotten really good results with the one that we have. We've had 5 cardiac arrests that we've been able to. If they were going to get
Thanks, Aaron. So you talked about the air packs, the rescue / mini pumper.
Yep, I think I'm gonna let Rob just.
So we, the fire department is asking for.
950.
Well, we put 950, but I think we pared it down to 800.
So we originally requested $950,000 for rescue engine. I submitted a little order. What we're looking to do is combine a 25-year-old vehicle and a 30-year-old vehicle into one rescue engine. Generally, a commercial fire truck chassis is good for 20 to 25 years, and a commercial chassis is good for 25 to 30 years. Currently, we have 2 vehicles, one a commercial cab, one is a custom cab. They are at the end of their life. Our 93 Pierce engine is 30 years old this year. It is still in good working condition, but it's also a 30-year-old vehicle. Both vehicles are getting toward the end of their lives. And what we're looking to do is get what they call a rescue engine. And it's a pumper we have with more compartment space to put the equipment that's on our rescue truck on this engine at the same time. So it's more or less an all-in-one vehicle that you can send to just about any emergency that we have. Maintenance is going to be an issue that's going to continue. Both of them, GMC doesn't make the top chassis, that is what our rescue truck is anymore. So finding parts to fix things that break are gonna be getting even more and more difficult. The 93 engine is still mechanically sound and it functions well, but it's also 30 years old. We've talked about doing what they call a refurb on it, which will get you another 10 years, but in order to do that, it's not very cost effective. By the time you spend $300,000 to refurb the engine, you're going to get 10 years out of it. When you can combine two and get more out of it. We have the fire department 7 pieces of apparatus. And if anybody's ever been in the station when all 7 of them are inside, it is very tight. We're looking to combine 2, which would increase our space, a little more space, reduce the risk of accidents, bumping trucks into each other, and it's very tight when you try to fit all of 7 of them in there at the same time. We also have, looking at when we bought these 2 pieces of apparatus versus now, our roster is about half of what it used to be. We used to have 45 members, now we're down to around 20. Getting people who are A, comfortable driving large vehicles, and B, that are around when the emergencies happen. They're getting fewer and further between. We have 20 now. We have probably 15 that are very active. During the day, if we can get 6 to 8 people for an emergency, we're doing really well, which is much better than our neighbors can do, most of them. So it makes it more important that we can have 1 vehicle on the road with all the equipment we need versus 2 or maybe 3 vehicles that need to get to the scene to have all that equipment. I did include pictures of the 2 vehicles that we hope to replace. And on the outside, it's funny because everybody's, oh, you guys have such nice trucks, and we really do. They're very fortunate. The trucks that the town bought, they've lasted us forever. Depending on who you ask in the fire department, that engine is still the best truck in the barn. They will swear up and down that if they had a choice, that's the one they pick. But it is also 30 years old. If you were registering a passenger car, you could register it as a you know, they all have their issues. They look nice from the outside, but up underneath, they're starting to road and rust, and have the same problems that every other vehicle that is driven in the state has. They look nice until you get up close and dig in. We really, the officers and the members really feel that combining the 2 and putting all the tools on 1 truck is the best option for the department and the family.
Questions? Tom?
How are we thinking about paying for this then? Just to clarify, you're looking for 800. Is this a cash purchase only, or are there lease options?
So, I mean, that's gotta be a board decision to decide which way they want to do this. In our investment meeting that we had with Dan Lay, was it back in January? Dusty, I think, back in January. You know, we threw out to him the fact that we had a lot of capital requests this year. Last year, we bonded a lot of stuff. Interest rates are not that favorable right now. And so his advice was, whatever you need for capital, just take it. Do not bond it. And I know I see Bristol, it was in today's paper, just took out a bond to redo their school at just under 6%. So, you know, on a $6 million bond, they're going to pay $2 million in interest. So that's the advice that's been given. No, the undesignated fund balance keeps, well, I won't say no, that's up to you, but
The reason I ask is because we had it at very low now and we aggressively filled it back up. So now we've got a very full one. We could maybe pull it back down a little bit.
but generally we pull it down by using it to offset the taxes for that coming year.
That's part of what.
Which is what we're probably looking to do again this year. And remember, the undesignated fund is money that we have to pay our bills. So if we draw it down to nothing and the economy goes sour and people don't pay their taxes, then we have to go out and borrow money to pay our bills. So
No, I'm not saying that. Maybe a little off the top. Because we've got it so helping.
you have to get voter approval to do it, though.
So the recommendation is to cut it out of our investment.
That's the recommendation from the investment advisor that we had, who's done a very good job with this account over the years. So I do trust his advice. Whatever I put in here,
535.
yeah, roughly. It's changed. I mean, it has, and investments aren't doing well right now. You know, you saw the numbers last night, so. We have looked into possibly doing a lease, yes. We've talked with them about the possibility of a
They'll,
lease.
they'll do out to a, depending on the company, they'll do out to like a 10-year.
Yeah. You may be able to.
But then,
Rate over that on that. It's still gonna be expensive.
but then you want to remember that money has to come out the next 10 years. And where is it coming from? If it's coming from the capital, that reduces the amount that we have every year to spend on other things that come on. Until eventually we're just paying loans out of the capital and we're not getting it. Yes. Mhm.
Look at the return over a 10-year period of time, you actually make out better lease. Depending on what you think of the return will be over the next few years. This year's bad year, last year was better than we thought it was going to be. But it might be worth the spreadsheet of that and getting and lay it and saying, look, what if we don't find it, but we look at a longer term lease with an option to back out of it. I just 800K scares me personally. I mean, I have no question or objection or expertise as to whether or not this is the right drug or not. Sounds like a great idea. The question is, how do we avoid, just taking a big whack at that investment account that we don't recover?
So what are we gonna get for a 30-year-old vehicle that we're gonna sell?
Right now, you might get $10,000.
Mhm.
There's no market for a 30-year-old truck unless somebody wants to buy it, put it in the party.
Just say,
Oh, geez. Don't give her any ideas. Kim?
For $300,000, neighborhood $300,000, you could do something with an existing and buy another 10 years. So the 950 is actually going to be 800,000.
Yes,
Okay, so if you're looking at spending 300,000 for an extra 10 years life on that vehicle versus 800,000, 20 to 25, so we'll call it 22 and a half. You're spending more per year to do that than you are to kick it down the can with that old one for $300,000. I mean, it looks scary to spend $800,000 this year. Maybe that's not the thing to do. I mean,
Would you trust your 40-year-old vehicle with your life?
and then we still,
That's basically what we're doing, we're trusting.
you're the one who made the suggestion.
I understand it.
You made that call.
It's an option. It's available.
Will it-
Not the best.
If you do it, will it give you another 10 years of life?
Yes,
Okay.
but not as,
Then I
not
would
as,
trust it. That's my
not
answer.
as safely that you.
and
Would be upgraded.
And that does not address the fact that we still then have the 29-year-old rescue truck that we can't get parts for. So we might spend 300,000 on that, but then we still have to replace the rescue truck for 250,000 or 300,000.
I think I kind of leaning towards supporting this. From the fact that looking for 10-year cover story, whether it's a repair or whether it's a lease, the future value of the truck 10 years from now, we continue with this 5 to 6% inflation rate. Are we really coming out ahead of that?
That's the question.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the whole point. I've got about as much faith in this economy that I'm thinking it might go back up to 10%. But, you know, sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And the devil you don't know is going to be 10 years down the road. If we got something like this, I think the future generations of boys sitting here are going to be facing the same thing, not in 20 or 22 years, probably in 30 or 35 years. Because every town does the same thing, questions about it. So when you break this down to an annual cost of 30 years, it looks far more attractive, I think, than trying to repair 2 vehicles or replace 1 vehicle, fix another one, go on a lease. Seems to make more sense to kind of bite the bullet right now. I think. How long is it going to be?
That's the other.
That's-
big variable is, you know, I would, best guess, 2 years.
2 years.
Worst case, 3. Where we signed for the tanker last year and it will be done in July or August of this year. Aaron's looking at a new ambulance and that's going to be 2 years out. Everything is a lot further out than every year.
And it was locked in.
Once the truck is spec and contract is done.
Currently, no, Bill, it's not.
Yeah, we have.
No, currently, no.
But
No.
I mean, if it passes and June. And you order it then. It's locked at that point. So I think.
Well, we went around about this on the tanker truck last year and they didn't want to lock it in. So remember, we did finally talk them into doing that. The other thing that I would point out with this too is, you know, the town's ISO rating, which is their homeowners insurance rating, 50% of that ISO rating is based on your fire department and the condition and age of your equipment amongst other things. So, you know, as our equipment ages, it changes your homeowners insurance as well. And that's something that happens townwide. So I'll just throw that out there as well. Yeah, I don't know it. I don't know the answer to that question.
Interest rates aren't going to go down. They're insuring uninsured bank deposits now. They say the taxpayers are going to pay for it. That means they're printing money. Hopefully it's inflation.
Well, and they raised rates again, what, another 1/4 point today?
Further questions on the fire department for now? All right, thank you. Police department.
Larry wants a truck. My answer is just no. I mean, you can discuss it if you want to. He doesn't need it. It's nice to have, but no. I find it very hard to justify the need for that. It's pretty, no doubt.
Is that replacing the existing vehicle?
No. That's my other no. He could, if we put a trailer hitch on it, he could. But we've got plenty of pickups at Public Works that can pull that boat around, so. Yeah, no. And he already knows that was gonna be my answer, so. Not a big deal.
Public Works.
Public Works, a little bit of good news on the loader that Ted has requested. And I enclosed a bunch of pictures in here for you guys to see. If you look at the second photo, that's a picture of the window that's already fallen out of the existing loader because it's rusted. The following photo shows the frame of the cab of the other side window. The fourth picture is the floorboard, which you can see is completely rusted out. And then just some other photos of the condition of the loader itself. You know, it has 8,000 hours on it, so it's quite a bit. We did look into possibly having it refurbished, but you know, they were talking at a maximum of like $175,000 to rebuild it. And the good news is he's already spec'd one out that would cost about $200,000. So for $25,000 to get a brand new one versus rebuilding that one. And they will give us $40,000 in trade for the old one. So the actual request would have changed from 250 to 160. Yeah.
It's down,
The trade-in, yeah. Major culvert repairs, there's Foy Road and Brown Road that have very large culverts that our crew doesn't have the equipment or the ability to take care of that need to be done. So he's asked for 50,000 to do that and 465,000 in paving this year. And I included in your budget packet all the roads that we have and all the condition that the roads are in. And this will start to pretty much take care of all the unsatisfactory roads that are left because some of the roads that are fair are going to start falling into that category pretty soon.
There's one I drive down a lot. It should be unsatisfactory, or it should be soon. But I like that we're on this.
And we do now have through the county, a program that they got for it, and it's licensed for any town that wants it. It's like a GIS system that tracks the roads, so we can keep better track of what the condition actually is. And yes, and try to get to some of it before it happens. Ted and I have been investigating buying a crack sealing machine. I don't know if you've seen them before on the highway. Sometimes you'll see them out there with this little wand and they're filling the cracks in. What happens when you start getting these alligator cracks in there, especially in the wintertime when the moisture gets down underneath and it freezes and pushes back up, and that's when the roads start to deteriorate. If we get at them and seal the cracks so that stops happening, we're going to get more years out of that road surface than what we're currently getting. So we might end up having to invest $50,000 or $60,000 into something like that, but we could be saving $150,000 in paving. So we are looking at doing something like that. We didn't include it this year, but. Yeah.
any questions on public works items?
So that's $515,000.
Total. Yes.
And what is the average annually? What have we averaged in the past? So just looking at the projections, and looking at 515 this year, 350 next year. I have no way to know whether these are.
They're just guesses, just like anything else in here is just a guess.
I mean,
Um,
overall versus public works. You're talking about overall, right?
I mean, paving, we've generally done around 250, 300,000 a year to try to keep up with these unsatisfactory roads. Once we get them there and start really maintaining them, we can really start backing off on some of this paving stuff. We just want to get these unsatisfactory roads done. And then we can ease back a little bit. Paving costs, of course, have gone absolutely sky high. I'm not even confident that we'll be able to get as much done this year as we were hoping to. Yep. You know, it's just not there. So, but when we go out to bid, sometimes we get surprised. Yep.
Any other questions on the public works items? Okay. Wastewater treatment plant.
Not a big request from a wastewater plant this year. This is more of a safety issue for the crew than, you know, we're faced with some major issues with wastewater treatment plant. It doesn't appear that we're going to be allowed to keep the current plant where it sits. It looks like we may have to relocate it somewhere outside of the floodplain. So I don't see there's a whole lot of, we didn't see a whole lot of point in spending a whole lot of money in it if it wasn't going to be able to stay there. So Rob has just asked to do some of these manholes and bring the controls above ground so that his guys aren't crawling in confined spaces constantly, which is a safety issue. So that's why the request is fairly small. You can expect us to come back at some point in the future with a much larger request, probably next year or the year after, but.
Any questions? Okay. Main art gallery request. Richard, who I think is online, had asked if he could speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Chairman Whitfield, members of the Board of Selectmen, and Town Manager Simmons. My name is Richard Reese. I am the current president of the Main Art Gallery, which is celebrating its 65th anniversary as your tenant in the old Academy building. We have a great season planned, and I hope that we'll see you all there during the course of the summer. We have made a proposal to the town for your consideration that I think has the great benefit of fulfilling the kind of partnership that we imagined in entering the 20-year lease last year, so that we could maintain our good record of stewardship and maintain this 1807 building as a 21st century arts center. We propose to you a series of improvements that are based on an analysis that included Les Fossil, David Pope, and work by our consultant in terms of grant writing, and that is Kerry Hadley, who you know. What we're looking at are the top priorities from that, what the 1772 Foundation helped us fund. They call a historic building condition assessment, and we did provide a copy of that to the town and to the selectmen. It's rather thick, multi-megabyte document, but within that comes the analysis and also the source of these numbers. We went out to a number of contractors for different projects, and I think, as you all know, none of those estimates stay stationary for very long. But we did have a good record last year when we put in the perimeter drain around the building, and that estimate was actually delivered on, even though it had taken some time. I think they found that the project was still something that they were glad to be doing for the benefit of the gallery, and so stayed with their estimate. And that project was funded by the Davis Foundation of $15,000, and MAG took $7,000 of its past year's retained earnings to be able to meet that $22,000 project. So this year, we're offering you an opportunity to double your money. Projects that are totaling in the neighborhood of $57,000, as we've illustrated in a 3-column table that we provided by letter of March 13th to sort of update our initial appropriations request. And it shows that if we were able to get the maximum amount of available money from the 1772 Foundation and the Belvedere Fund, we would be able to finance $28,800, asking the town for a 1-to-1 match of that, and get these several painting and repair and renovation projects underway, and to take a step toward protecting the over 30-year-old windows that are clearly deteriorating and have been quoted at a rather hefty price to undergo full renovation. We could at least give them some protection so that we can get to them over the course of a couple of phases. And that's the proposal that you have in front of you. I certainly urge you to help support us. I think that those of you who have been to the gallery, and I recognize many of you have, understand that we are providing a great opportunity for the artists, not only in Wiscasset, but in our immediate area, who come to us and make this a destination that people want to come to in Wiscasset. Our board member goes beyond just Wiscasset residents, but we have several of those on board, including myself. And but the others who come from Lincoln County or nearby counties do so because they think that Wiscasset has something valuable to offer the broader community. And we all are in the business, if you will, even if it's a nonprofit business, to attract people to the prettiest village in Maine. And I think that the more we do as a gallery in terms of our programming, and we're increasing classes, we're increasing free presentations to the public, means that we'll become an even better known cultural destination for the entire Mid-Coast area. So with that, I'd invite any questions on this, but I really do think that we have a situation that has a lot of benefit for our community, and for those that we want to invite into our community and who we'd love to see shopping in our stores. We have a number of merchants in Wiscasset who are sponsors of ours, as well as people beyond Wiscasset, Dow Furniture, others that are in the area in Lincoln County, and see the value that the Maine Art Gallery is providing the Mid-Coast community.
Any questions for Richard? Heather? No? Tom?
I just want to clarify exactly what the ask is. Is it this 137,200? What is the ask?
28.8. That was emailed to us.
Yeah, and I can clarify if you let me. This does, that 28.8 is what would allow us to match 1-to-1. You can see in the very bottom that in order to actually tackle the windows themselves, as opposed to protecting them with the storm windows, there's a larger amount. As I said, we paid for the drain on our own the last time. We would encourage the town to develop a phased in process, and that we could start the windows with the town's support. For that $40,000 would be 8 of the windows. These windows were put in at town expense back in 1990. The town funded $42,000 to the Maine Art Gallery in 1990 for brick pointing, other brickwork, and for 16 windows. And these are the 16 windows whose deterioration is, now an issue that needs renovation.
Yeah, I think the confusion is, I don't know that the budget committee got your email, Richard. I think that was just to the board.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have email addresses for everyone. I trusted your process to try to distribute. I'm sorry if I didn't get that through the right way.
You get that.
I just sent it to Tom.
Ask is 28,000 for this year. And then, but that's the first tranche, if you will, but there's another list of things that they'd like to do in future years. Is that correct? What's the total amount we're talking about?
Am I correct that it's 40,000 each of the next 2 years?
Correct.
$108,000 over 2 years. That's the total.
We would provide half of the amount of grants that I had through Historic Foundation. And so the town would only pay half of the total cost. All in the total cost to redo the windows. And we have to have a process. You want to make filled before you do the windows, you want to fix the eaves, we're having water infiltration. So the total cost is 100 to 110,000 and climbing as everything is. So we're trying to split those costs. Grant funds, and then ask for the match from the town. And if we can have a commitment of $10,000 at this meeting before April, the 1772 Foundation, who gave us a grant to prepare the historic condition assessment, that's the 30-page book that we did, and hired the fossil worker data for different people. If we can, so we got a grant to produce that. Now, we're in good stead with 1772, but they warned me. We give first opportunity to receive these grants if an organization says we have the $10,000. I submitted a $20,000 grant for phase 1 of the windows, which is just the painting and repairing the eaves of phase 1. Then it moves on to the others. So again, if we can have a $10,000 match from the town immediately, as well as another $20,000 if that has to go to vote on the budget, then I can call 1772 and say, I have the match.
We would
I can
just
clarify.
I think if you'll let me, so I believe though it's 28,800 for this year's request. Yes, and then 40,000 town portion and 40,000 town portion. Yes,
That is,
is that
that
correct?
is,
Richard?
yes,
Okay,
that is correct. Now, this is based on our best estimate for the full restoration at $5,000 a window. We have not explored if the town believes that the historic benefit to the building can be accomplished using a different window replacement system. And we are trying to look into that because we do recognize that this sounds like an awful lot per window. So we're continuing to explore to see if that can be reduced, but that's what we have heard so far for this type of window and doing a window by window renovation.
If we have to follow some procedures from the national.
Yep.
Yeah.
but that was your question, right? The first question.
That was
Okay.
the first question. Assume that over time, the numbers may change, you look at the windows, that's all good to go. I guess my next question is, this is not to say that I'm against what they're asking for or for it, but why is this a town obligation?
We own the building.
We've got a lease, right?
Yes.
Under the lease. Already here, we rented it for 42 years for $42. But in the lease, doesn't it say
20.
something to the effect of it was as is, where is, the obligations are not on the town, accepted its sole option. Again, I can't quote it from, I can probably quote it.
That's how.
So just my questions were, A, how much money are we talking about? The second one is, why is the town on the hook for this? Why should the town pay for it?
So, okay, just a second. Okay. First of all, part of the reason why we ended up doing the lease, and which was voted on by the town, it wasn't just a board decision, just to be clear, is because it helps with getting grants. However, there is still the question of, well, we're not getting any money from the lease, basically, and we're being asked. So, okay, Carrie, come here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No.
We are paying rent annually of $3,500 because we spent $22,000 on the building last year. The lease included offset. So for any money we spend on actual maintenance, not like anything that's for our particular programming or our particular need to maintain and store the building, anything we spend is provided an offset. And John Sawyer, our treasurer, who's here, just recently updated everyone about, I think it was $27,000 we spent. So we're basically paid up our rent. So what was the year?
7 years.
For the next 7 years already, because of all the money we have appropriated.
I understand
Okay.
that from the lease. My question is beyond that. I'm just trying to understand, maybe it makes sense for the town to do this. It may make sense to do this.
Could-
Yeah. I'm just trying
Can
to
I
figure out,
address that?
in terms of the contract, is it an obligation of the town? I believe is it is.
No.
Okay.
There's nothing specific. Bill?
I think it's time to cut this. I'd like to see us sell this and the Scout building. Giving these people the first preference for buying the building. I think it's time we get away from it.
Can I can I address that?
Yeah,
Okay.
You
I-
just a
I'd
just a
address-
second, Richard, just a
Okay,
second.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can catch the rest of it on.
Yep.
but we see that lease.
Sure.
So we can-
Yeah.
That's all.
Did I sent it to, yeah.
I have a copy of it. I can send it to you.
Right, thank you.
Oh, she's gonna go. All right, go ahead, Richard.
What I would say is, the discussion around the lease last year was to identify and continue the obligation that had existed, rotating 5-year leases and focused on normal maintenance. That is the tenant's obligation. However, it makes clear in the lease that that does not include capital improvements. And that's what we're talking about tonight. That is not the tenant's obligation. That continues with who had it to begin with, which is the town. And that's, despite that, we are looking for grants so that the town can get $1 for every dollar it puts in, which is not a deal that comes around very often. So I would say that this meets the agreement we reached. It was an agreement only last year that was authorized by a 2-to-1 vote in favor of the extension of our tenancy. And the issue, it seems to me, about how long the building is kept seems to be running counter to the 2-to-1 ballot that indicated that the town supported our increased tenancy.
Other questions? Kim?
Well, I would just like to point out the statement that's provided in the main art gallery's request, which is the landlord and tenant intend to cooperate with one another on the completion of grant applications for funds to assist with improvements to the premises to the extent such grants are available and do not require town funds not already appropriated for such purpose. I hope I'm not being naive to what I believe that to say was that the town will aid in the completion of grant applications, not will back those applications with funds. It very clearly says that the town is not required to use. You can add.
Ron? May I respond?
Go ahead.
So what that language certainly was intended, and I believe means, is that we would not go out for grants and commit the town to any money that hadn't been appropriated. And that's why we're in front of you asking for an appropriation so that it matches what our grant request is. And we're not negotiating for the town when we get these grants. We're negotiating in order to fund a project, and we can only do so using town money when we come to the town ahead of time, as we're doing now, for the fiscal year in which these grants would be paid, to get you to agree that these would be appropriated funds for these purposes.
So I am. I would say so.
But I don't take this to mean that it obligates the town to have to spend this money.
Further questions? Brian?
Looking at the windows, there's some pictures here, and those didn't happen overnight. There's water coming in from somewhere. They mentioned the cupola initially. That should be the first priority. If water will leak down,
So we, again, we work with all kinds of people out in like Buffalo. The next thing after the window,
why not that first?
because that's the priority we were told by, we had all kinds of consultants come in, energy consultants. We had an energy audit done of the building. We are trying our best to take care of this level with a limited resources. We understand the town has limited resources also.
Right now,
We're going with stuff that will. It's probably like them constantly keeping the curriculum keeping that shape. The windows, we really just they're literally glass is falling out. And it's
I was just wondering, because I've got things scratching on my chimney. And I'm not gonna paint my ceilings until I get the chimney done.
No, I hear you. Well, we did realize that, and of course, it's, we'd love to do everything at once, but the biggest priority is these folks.
But again, the window didn't happen overnight, so that function take care of.
Yeah, you gotta add it because we didn't.
Which actually I started from the beginning.
Yes.
How big are the windows?
Big, 24 pane, I'm not sure what that means in dimensions, probably. Probably the size of this door, but without the side of the water.
One piece of glass.
No, two, that was pane. That was panes.
Not double sash,
Double, they open,
double hung sash,
double hung.
about that size.
Well, no, again, taking off one whole section at the side and at the bottom.
It's just somewhere near 9/9,
Yeah. I don't know.
those are pants.
They're all wooden, yeah, wooden pane. Turn about a dollars.
$1,000. Well, I'd like that job.
It's very laborious work. They literally take the window out, they bring it to a workshop. They have to take everything apart. They have to they describe all of the ways they take it over there. They describe linseed oil and then letting it slide. And it's very, very particular work. Again, the Secretary of the Interior mandates on historic structures, you have to follow certain works. Of course, I also note in the lease that the main art gallery had entered into the lease, accepting that the property is in as is condition. So there are no promises here.
Right, we do, there's a section where we talk about going into partnership at the time to maintain the building. But of course, there's no written thing that says next year will be windows, we're just telling you, this is what we got a grant to do an assessment. It's a gift to you, 30-page, yes, it tells you, it's a roadmap, what has to happen to the facility. And now the roadmap is just really kind of left sitting in ourselves because the building is it. I come from a background where a town did invest and treasure the historic structures. I was manager of Camden, Maine, and there was always a reserve account every year. We said, okay, we know in so many years we have to replace the windows, or in so many years it's great. We're going to plan for the replacing the carpeting. If you do those little pieces, then it never becomes this, I think, you know, that we would have hit in your face. But right now, we're at that point where these are the priorities we're saying have to be addressed, or the building really shouldn't fall. Not be able to use, or even be worthless. Okay, talking, selling it.
Further questions?
Yes, may I speak?
Sure.
James Cochin. I've had more than 44 years of professional experience in historic preservation, museum, and art gallery management. And I tried to help the town guiding on the historic leasing following National Park Service and other historic leasing projects with this very issue in mind. Long-term leases are never usually granted for historic structures and by other organizations unless the new tenant is willing to undertake all the major capital improvements under the guidance and review of the town or the other entity. Now, what I see in the large package, I haven't seen this March 13th memo, is about $160,000 of ask money over the next few years, much of which is actually contrary to preservation standards and things that structures such as Academy are exempt from for handicapped ramps.
Oh, Jim, we lost you.
Sorry?
Can
Let
you
me-
repeat the last couple sentences? You dropped out.
You hear me now?
Not really.
Hear me now?
No, it's really,
Hello?
there we go.
There you go.
Okay. So what I was saying is a structure such as this is normally exempt from a number of things that are being proposed for it. A National Register property, which was its register status was granted on its architectural integrity, will be destroyed by the proposed handicapped ramp, which this structure is exempt from under standard federal rulings. This is done, of course, to being proposed for allowing visitors to the gallery access. The climate control system, one thing we learned with the Park Service and when I was at Mount Vernon is structures of over 200 years or so like this, when you introduce HVAC systems, actually causes major damage to the structure. So while they brought in an energy efficiency expert, they should have brought in an architectural conservator to look at the fabric of the building and whether putting in HVAC and putting in some of these elements that will destroy the historic fabric to allow them to have a more capable operating gallery is detrimental to the structure. And this is why I was concerned about having Section 106 standards written into the lease. I'm not averse, I'm all for what gallery's trying to do, but it seems to me that it's in the best interest of the town, as Bill Maloney suggested, to reconsider putting this potentially in the market or opening a new historic lease and instead offer the main art gallery. I would propose, say, $10,000 a year for the next 5 to 10 years to help them lease a building that is actually far more useful as a real gallery space, because a structure such as this never lends itself really to an art gallery type
experience, there are a number of buildings now on Main Street that will be looking for leases. I think the town and the Maine Art Gallery should be looking at possibly exploring a lease for the Maine Art Gallery that is more downtown, more centrally located. And then when they vacate if they vacate the academy, that could be put up for a historic lease that will actually generate income to the town and pay for capital improvements. Or as Bill has suggested, we can put protective covenants for preservation on the building and then put it on the market. And again, if the Maine Art Gallery wanted to purchase it, they have the preemptive right for first refusal. Thank you.
I just want to clarify before we get off on a huge tangent here. We're not making a decision about breaking a lease or selling a building or doing something like that. We're making a decision, and not tonight. We're answering questions and having discussion about a request for capital. So I appreciate the comments, but I just want to clarify that before we go down a road that does not make sense at this moment.
Well, can I mention something about the grant process?
About what?
About the grant process that is being discussed, that they're coming to the town for capital monies.
Okay,
So the town should not commit to that money unless the town could, and the worst scenario, I still think it's the bad move for the town to put any money in. They were supposed to take care of the structure in return for a long-term lease. But if the town decides by vote to go forward with that, not be,
Jim, you're cutting out again.
you hear me now?
A little better, yeah.
They go forward for a grant and the town votes to fund to the level they're requesting this year. It's a pledge only if the grant comes through. If the grant is not successful, the town should not be committed to a single dollar of that money.
I didn't think we were gonna do otherwise.
Yeah. No, that's definitely agreed.
Right.
Okay,
And the Maine Art Gallery.
Okay, just a second.
Understands that. I'm sorry.
Okay, Carrie, and then Richard, and then Dwayne's got his hand in the back, and then,
Just, the concern that James had about, these people don't know about historic structures. That is not so. We worked, with an organization, south of Portland, and I can't remember the name right now, but I can get it. They had their historic energy, the person that specialized with historic structures. Les Fossil also specializes in restoration of historic structures using the national standard.
Richard?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is a situation where I agree with Jim. We're not asking for the town to appropriate money except as match under the lease for the funding we would get from a grantor.
Dwayne, you had your hand up.
Yes, with some grants, though, you have to earmark the money before you can actually apply for the grant,
Yes,
which is what we've run into with Maine Water Conservation. You know, so this is a question of whether or not we actually want to continue to enhance the history of Wiscasset and the buildings that we do have and keep those going, or we don't.
other questions?
That's good.
Yes. We've been
They've okayed everything.
discussed with everyone we have. They give you the contact and find it all out. And 1772 is a sub-organization of Maine Conservation. And so we work together very closely.
All right, so I can update my book. So the request for this year is 28,800. Thank you.
Yeah, Richard?
The request for this year is 28,800 to be matched. There is still a request to do phase one of the windows at 40,000 unless,
I just need to know what's this year. I don't care about next year. I just want to know what I need to put in this year.
It's 28.8 gets matched, 40,000 is unmatched in our request. We point out that we have already paid 22,000 that
Right.
was not matched last year at all. And we've had no town funding for capital improvement for several years. If we actually want to start the repair of the rehab of the windows, that lower right-hand column is proposing 40,000 for 8 windows in fiscal year 2024, unless we can all find out a way to do that for less money, because we're not interested in spending more money if we can find someone who can meet the town's expectations for those windows at less.
Okay, so I guess now I'm confused because what I clarified is not what you're saying earlier. So are you asking for 28.8 or 68.8 for this FY 24?
We're asking for 68.8. 28.8 gets matched. The other is subject to identifying a cheaper alternative to do 8 of the windows. That's the ask. If the town feels that they're only capable of doing the match request, then we will at least have the storm windows that will help preserve the existing windows until a future time when the town believes they can invest capital improvement into the windows.
Okay, so just to clarify, if we're looking at this the way we're looking at the other departments, we've got one item that's 28.8 that would be matched. And then we have a second item that you'd prefer us to also fund for 40, hoping that it's going to be less than that, but that is not matched by anything. Is that correct?
Correct. And the reason for
It
that.
is not matched by anything for that project.
Correct.
That is correct.
Right now, we could find the grant, that we would.
Yeah, I'm just making sure we have it.
Postman
Straight.
intent. So anyway, so that's why we know that we can find it. So that's the painting and the preparation part.
Yeah.
Custom insert windows, and then we don't know where we could set a method, but we can put windows phase in that project to make it home town.
Okay, so when we come back to this next week, I want to make sure we need to make sure that everybody has the latest email that I just sent you, Tom. And that we're all clear on those are the two things that we are looking at, okay?
You want us to do 28,800.
As well as,
One at a time.
The total is 68,800.
How much do you want from us?
68,800 this year.
68,800.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we will provide another almost 30,000 and then get this.
That's all I need.
Chairman Whitfield, may I speak again, please?
yes, briefly, and then I think we'd like to move on because we're going to come back to this next week.
Okay, the lease that the town has with Maine Art Gallery says that all capital projects must be approved and reviewed by town management. And if the town is being expected to put forward major funding, not only does the town need to approve it, but I believe that we must go forward with the bid process that the town is involved in. These are quotes from single parties. There's been no formal bid process where they tender out for a number of different options. And I think this has to be explored before you go forward with any funding or capital improvements such as this to the structure.
Well, we can't go out to bid until we have the money, so.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Broadband.
So one thing not on your capital improvement that has come up since this budget was done is a request from the broadband committee for funds for broadband. Evan's here. I'm sure you can speak to that a whole lot better than I can.
Well, we talked to you about 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and we asked us the same. Given that we've had discussions with Fidium, we also have to put up a match for that. And the match is based on how many premises are in, it's based on what the state is requiring for a match to even apply for a broadband grant. I think we've said it enough times that this is an unprecedented opportunity in terms of the leverage that the town will get with external money if we were successful with a grant application. And at this point, we're framing it as with Fidium. And the math of this is simple. We have, according to the maps that the state has provided, 1,888 premises that have to be served with fiber optic connection. And Fidium has asked that the town put up $150 per premise. That comes to $283,200. However, the county has a broadband fund to put up a maximum of $100,000 if we were successful. $100,000. So that would reduce the town's ask to $183,200. When we were here a few weeks ago, we asked if some of the ARPA money that has not been used, plus committee raised $8,000 for this. And whether the combination of that, if we still have the $47,000 that we talked about a few weeks ago, plus $8,000, that's $55,000. And we would like to spend it out of that money to reduce the ask to the town, because we think that might be more palatable for a request. So that the request to the town on the warrant would be $128,200.
But then I have to ask for additional money from someplace else anyways. So my recommendation, if you're going to do it and take the money out and be done with it. Just leave the ARPA funds for some of these other smaller things that aren't being funded.
I think the most important thing is that we get a warrant passed. And if it's 183.2, it is, but we're looking politically at one we sell. So that's the other reason.
And am I correct that if for some reason the grant does not come through, then it's?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions?
Just on the math of that, excuse me, you said you needed 1,888 premises. That's how many the grant?
That's only from the map.
It says that's what we think would have.
It's the map. That's it. So that's the bottom line.
So $90 a house, so 150 total,
150.
and the 90, okay, so that brings us to 283 number. Like,
Just to give you a perspective, we did a study that actually did. Total cost of that was what, close to $6 million. So this money, if we were successful, would leverage a huge amount of money as well, both from what Fidium would put in and what hopefully what a grant would subsidize to build out. The other advantage is that if they get the grant money, they have to build the whole thing. They can't just cherry pick the money. And that's why they don't do it anyway. Why we haven't seen them that year, either. It's not profit. But it's a huge incentive to do that.
Tom?
Comment I would have is, this is absolutely the right way to do it. In my opinion, you guys have done, the whole committee has done a tremendous amount of work and gone gone through the options and arrived at, well, I spent 30 years in tech and it's the best option. I think we have. Question is there any recoupment of this upfront investment built into the deal over time? So you know, as this thing rolls,
That can be negotiated. That can be negotiated by the town. Some towns have negotiated the upfront subscriber costs for multiple years as they offer for a year, 10, 20. So some towns have negotiated to keep that for the first 3 years. So that's well over.
If we can get that,
it would be great if you could.
there's a big effort on digital equity. There will be money coming, if everybody understands that. Access to the cloud and affordability of the network. And the ability to use it. A lot of people do not have digital skills. And so there will be more money coming to us on that we're already involved in. Putting out those opportunities. We've already had one meeting. But I think what they probably would also be looking at, not just to have that money come back as surplus to town, but putting it into a very robust digital application. Because that, I mean, that's the future. That's the future.
I would just add that Consolidated has said that they were going to put in $700 per house, which is the minimum to get to the grant, so that's 1.3 million. If we put in that 283,000 county money, hopefully they would put in more, but they're going to be asking to stay for. So this is hopefully bringing an excess of $5 to $6 million project. But by the time it gets built, it'll be set.
Other questions?
Good job.
Okay, thank you. All right, fees,
Revenues.
Yeah.
Well, because that's what has to go on the warrant. The fees do not have to go on the warrant. So if we don't even get to that tonight, it's not a big deal.
Thank you. All right, revenues.
So as I said earlier, the fees are not reflected in this except for Dwayne. The fees that he's proposed so far this year are reflected in his estimate. The discussion on the fees will not change this number greatly. If we increase fees, yes, obviously we increase the revenue. But we're not looking at drastic, and when we get to this, you'll see that a lot of the fees we just can't change anyways, and some of them just change small amounts. So there's no significant increase anticipated in any of this. So we kind of talked about recreation last week anyways, with Dwayne. We're holding at that figure as of this moment. Excise tax, we're holding at last year's rate. We are doing a little better this year, but there's still a shortage of new vehicles, and each year your excise tax drops. So I'm not confident that I want to boost that number up a great deal. State revenues, as you can see, we've done very well so far this year. State revenue sharing projections did come out last week. The town's revenue share projection for next year is just over $888,000 versus $845,000 this year. I have never put the entire estimate in our revenue estimates. One, it gives us a little bit of cushion at tax commitment time to raise that estimate if we need to help offset taxes. So I put 650 of that 880 in there. You know, the state revenue sharing is very economically driven. It's all state sales and income tax. If the economy goes sour, revenue sharing goes very sour with it. So, but as you can see, we've already collected more than that this year. We've already exceeded the projections for state revenue sharing, not all state revenues, but revenue sharing. Miscellaneous fees are down this year. Our tax agreement with Maine Yankee is expired. And included in miscellaneous in the past was their impact fee. I don't know if there will be an impact fee in their new agreement or not, because we haven't reached an agreement with them as of yet. So I'm not including any money in there. Last year, the last agreement had an impact fee in the way the taxes were calculated. And this year it just may end up being straight up property taxes. We don't know that yet. So I was hoping to have something together by the time this come together, but we don't. If it changes and the budget gets passed, that's just revenue that we'll have to offset taxes with next year. EMS revenue is, you can see, is running ahead of projections this year. Call volume is up, and we also took on the town of Alna. So that will provide extra revenue for EMS. So that's why that is up. Transfer station has been running a little ahead of what we anticipated. So we increased that. The budget increases. So the revenue also increases because Alna and Westport have to pay a larger share of that budget. So that boosts the revenue as well. Charge for services, we dropped a little bit. We're running a little bit behind. Unfortunately, lien fees seem to be up a little bit this year, which is again an indication that taxes are coming in a little bit slower than what we anticipated. And so that goes back to me not wanting to dip too much into our fund balance. Senior Center has already collected everything they anticipated, so we upped them a little bit. Airport will be up some this year because we will have the full year lease of the solar project, which is, it looks like they've got most all of the panels done out there. So they're moving along pretty well on that. And the waterfront fees are up a little bit just because we've been better at collecting fees for use of the tie-ups. So, so because of Maine Yankee, revenue is not projected to jump a whole lot next year. I think that's what, 167,000, something like that. So that's where that's at. I try to be conservative on estimating revenue because if we fall short on our revenue, then we're short on the year, and anything that we are short ends up coming out of our fund balance to balance our books. We carry things, whatever we have over goes into the fund balance next year, we can just use it to offset taxes. So.
Questions? Okay. Do you want to?
If you want to talk about fees tonight, that's up to you guys. We've been here almost 2 hours, so like I said, none of this is going to affect the warrant in any way.
Table till next week, and if there's time and we want to take the time.
If we go through them, you will, and I think I sent them to you too, didn't I, Tom? Yeah. So you'll see some that require an ordinance change. We don't have time to do that in this warrant. That would have to be a future vote, maybe in November, to make those changes. So.
Curves, he said, we're prepared to have a discussion about these. Why don't we take it up next time? Is that you think? Because that's something about the bottom. I've just seen a couple of the areas and discussion.
Probably maybe take that up tonight.
Take what?
I beg your pardon, Tom.
I was just saying, maybe you guys.
That's fine with me.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Does that mean
It's gonna take a little bit of time to discuss it.
Yeah, because next time we need to obviously get the votes done and make some decisions. So my thought was we'll go through easy ones in terms of, I think there's a whole bunch that we don't really have a lot of choice on anyway, for one reason or another, get those done and then have whatever discussion we need to on the ones that need discussion. So,
So I would ask the board, are there any budgets here, now that we've done this, that you want to see changes on? So I can present those changes before the meeting.
Parks and Rec,
No, just for the board.
Parks and Rec,
And what are you asking for?
to reduce it.
Thank you, but do you have an amount in your mind?
Yeah, I'd like it back under $1 million at least. I think I've said this before. We've got some pretty serious things that we need to cover. One hypothetical was that we could come up with the figure that it would take to bring all of our EMS employees up to the rate in the area. And whatever that figure is, we subtract that from Parks and Rec. I'm not suggesting we do that. It's just a for instance. But I don't support the current Parks and Rec budget.
any other changes? Are there others that you all have?
I would just concur. I don't know what the rest of it-
I can't hear what he's saying.
Can you speak up a little?
I think, I agree completely with what was just said. And I would like to see very specifically a budget that brings down the cost by between $150,000 and $200,000 a year and looks at fee increases as a way to close that gap. I think I also would be very helpful to see a couple of your trajectory as to where this is, what's the strategy for where this is going to be. Because I think, Dennis, you said last time, trust us, we're going in the right direction, and I do trust you, but it would be great to help as we think about this year to say, are we getting closer to better financials over the next couple of years? Or are we at risk of, every year it goes up by 50K and in a few years it's a very large number. So I would like to see a $200,000 cut. I would like to see gap close with increases in fees. I'd love to see a couple year, at least notional projection as to where this is headed. Make it a lot easier to support.
So I take that under advisement, but I do work for the board. So if the board is in general has a feeling that they want me to reduce this budget, then I certainly will do so.
Sure.
Yeah, Terry, and then you.
I think we deserve a budget that reflects what this town believes in. And specifically, I would say that I'm disappointed that there is any discussion of not supporting community center. I believe a lot of people support the community center. I understand that it's on a new trajectory. I believe Dwayne, when he projects that, and as he says that, it does take money to make money, and he is on a track to get that budget in line. I believe him. I believe him to actually that. He's good. We haven't supported him all the way yet. His budget's been cut, or he has not been supported at the level that he has asked for the last 3 years, or the last 2 years that I've been. So this year, we're elected to look at supporting what he says will make it work.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the largest loss that you would accept in a year? I mean, is this a scenario where you think that this $550,000 deficit is And you obviously think that's fine, and that may be fine, a lot of people will discuss it, is that a peak that you would accept, or in future years? You want it to come down, or do you find it then?
If one has looked at his budget, and this town manager has looked at the same budget and said that this budget is on a trajectory to be balanced within 2, 3, 4 years.
Who said that?
I don't remember saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Heather?
Yeah, a couple of things. I disagree with the characterization that we're not supporting Parks and Rec. I think this is supportive of Parks and Rec. And I also disagree with the concept, the statement that's being made that you have to spend money to make money, because we're not making money. We're getting 50 cents back on every dollar. So that's not spending money to make money. The other two things, as we've gone through this process and we talked to the other department heads, I've seen a lot of belt tightening in the other departments, a lot of creativity, a lot of making things work to control those budgets. And it looks like what we're doing here is taking all of that hard work and sending it over to the Parks and Rec budget. And I disagree with that philosophically and practically. And I just wanted to point out one other thing. I'm sorry my voice is shaking because it's just, I want to make the point that this is not to be seen, I don't think, as not supporting Parks and Rec. I think this is a very difficult effort of spreading these dollars as far as we can to cover everything that's needed. And when I look at this digital roadside sign request, I noticed that Dwayne has deemed this as necessary. And Dennis has deemed it as desirable. I agree with the desirable. And I think the way this Parks and Rec budget is configured is got a lot of things in the necessary category that could be moved over to desirable. So that's all I wanted to say at this point about that.
So back to the original question, I would agree with Dusty if it's possible to see an option where there is a reduction. I would also like to see that. Bill?
I'm for the Parks and Rec, votes yes, whatever. I think we should look at it and see if there's a place without hurting anything. Okay, looking at where we're losing the most money.
Yeah, I got three of you, that's fine. Are there any other budgets that, because once we get to next week, it's gonna be hard to start making drastic changes. So is there any other areas of concern outside of the capital, because that would be easier to change, but.
I think there's some revenue there.
I mean, I'm not thrilled with the SRO, but that's maybe another discussion.
Well, remember, that's being paid mostly by a grant this year, so that's 6,000 that's coming out of the town. That's done. This is the second year of it, so next year will be a much different story, but.
Makes it a little more palatable this year, so that's good.
So Bill, where would you like me to try to find some revenue? I mean, we're gonna talk about the fees, I know, but again, oh, you're talking about what? Well, I think that needs to be for Parks and Rec, yes, that's a discussion that needs to be had. You know, Dwayne presented his proposed fees, and I don't agree. He didn't have it increase for Wiscasset residents. I don't agree with that. I think everybody needs to pay more. So, and I already told him that. So this isn't something he's hearing for the first time tonight.
I can't hear, Bill.
Rentals on the pier, the waterfront should be looked at.
I'm not sure that we're going to offset anything with about $5,000 from raising fees on the pier.
Okay, so back to the original question, are there any other budgets? Because we're gonna talk about fees and we're gonna come back to all of these. Okay. Dwayne? Yes.
Over the last 2 years, the Parks and Rec has put over 200,000.
Yeah, can you come up?
Just so make sure that Dusty hears.
In the last 2 years, the Parks and Rec has put over $400,000 into the town fund balance. So that is additional funding that the town has not spent for the Parks and Rec, but the Parks and Rec has actually put that money back into the fund. So we didn't spend, we underspent our budget by 100,000 in the first year. And then we, our revenues were over 100,000 over last year. So, and I'm not saying that you can't cut spending. What I'm saying is that if you don't allow me to spend the money that I am able to bring in, I can't offer those certain programs. We had 140 kids in our summer program last year. That was almost, I believe it was, we had 88 the year before, so it was 52 people more enrolled in that program. Unless I cut people off, and I do not bring in those people to support those programs or to be involved in those programs, that cuts revenue. That cuts the ability to spend that revenue as well. So I put a budget forward that I believe is in the best interest of. I fully support what I put forward. If I spend it, great. If I don't spend it, great. If I raise more revenue than what I am projecting, that is awesome. I am also a taxpayer in the town. I get it. I understand it. That's why I'm trying to project.
Okay.
I don't want to fill the whole meeting here, but I think it is a big discussion, and perhaps we should continue when we have the fees discussion next week. Because I think you guys have some interesting points. I would like to understand better.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Okay. Thank you. All right.
But you do understand that the additional money that he's talking about goes into the fund balance for accounting purposes, does come out of his offset his budget.
I just look at it very simple. $0.2 million in expense. $820,000 of that is people. We're bringing in about 650. So you've got a substantial gap that the taxpayers pay. And, I don't know precisely how many property taxpayers we have in town, but if you take a half of $550,000 divided by that, you can come up with a rough number that each of us pays. My number is probably $300-400 a year that I pay just to cover that. So the question I have is not should we support the rec center? We should support the rec center. The question is how do we make sure it's sustainable for years? Does it kind of inch up 50K a year, 50K a year, and you reach a point where people say, I can't afford this. I agree with your comment that we should be paying more as users after user fees, not just through taxpayers. And so there's a gap that can be closed. We have a lot of variable costs there. It may be you can do 90-95% of what you're currently doing and have a better looking budget that I fully support. But right now we're not being given those options, and I would just like to see those options. That's all.
Wasn't happy to do it.
Okay.
I just want to put it on something that maybe everyone can understand. Last year, I asked Dennis, what amount of spending equates to 1 mil? And that number was approximately $465,000. If you look at the spending at Parks and Rec, it is over and above the revenue that they bring in. That works out to, according to last year's numbers, 1.2 mil. If your house is valued at $200,000, your taxes, $240 worth of your taxes goes to support that. At my house, I'm not a member. And at our house, we're paying more than a standard rate family. So it's easy to put it on the taxpayer. It's just easy to just spread it out, but it's not right. There needs to be more, again, users need to pay for things.
May I ask one final question? How much would it take what would you raise our participation rate, Wayne? And in order to make up this $500,000 deficit? The membership fee, what does it take?
You have to be competitive with the area.
Oh, I know,
Well, he
but what
can't-
would it take?
I don't think you can answer that. So I can speak for you, Dwayne. I don't think you can answer that on top of your head right now. Because it's, I mean, there's family membership, single members,
I know.
but that's what we can talk about next week.
It's so outlandish.
No,
Because on one stick, the back line, want to stay competitive. Our membership has increased quite a bit over the last couple of years because we are under the program. So
Yeah.
okay. All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Dusty,
Yes.
we are adjourned at 8:02. Thank you, everyone.